Hey everybody, hopefully everyone has had a great Thanksgiving holiday thus far, and thank you for those that have checked out charlieweingroff.com, the TEqualsR Plus streaming platform for the Black Friday sales, etc. So I think if any of you have not checked it out, if you're on the fence of any of the TEqualsR original DVDs, the only hard copy left is the TEqualsR 3, where, of course, when we filmed that, DVDs still mattered. So we still have some, not a lot, and those are a steep discount. And after a certain point in time, the only way you'll be able to get any of the hard copies will be through Perform Better after we get through this current batch. But hopefully check that out and see if anything makes sense. But I want to talk about being with a client yesterday, and it's interesting, and I pause because you'll see why, where he's always very, very impressed with what I like to call the dramatic result, where a very short period of time abolishes or makes a significant change in symptoms. And he also knows that in those types of situations, they're not going to last. They're not meant to last. They're really meant as part of a larger diagnostic approach where, if you treat a little bit and you can get a quick result, well, then you can come up sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, come up with an assumption that, okay, if a little bit got us this much better, a lot of this followed up by some other things would get us a lot better. And it comes off as, I try to explain, it's like this fake humble, where I don't think it's that complicated. I don't think it's, I just try to put pieces together just like he does in his profession. And I also said that I feel very genuine in acknowledging that, yeah, I know this is kind of cool sometimes. It's fun. I used to call it magic. It's clearly not magic. Magic is just what dumb people don't understand. But I will always take an opportunity to explain it, whether it's to the patient or client or others, or teach it how to do it to others, because there's no secrets here. There's nothing. There's no make-believe three letters that represent what I'm trying to do. It's all very, very genuine and very, very practical in my mind to reproduce. So I'm going to talk about where he was talking about some medial heel pain, and this was new. This hasn't been something that has come on before. So began the skip steps without missing anything, because this is an individual that I've been with for a very long time. So lots of other things, I kind of know what we're up against. So we just looked very, very regionally and started to see, number one, we just started to poke around, because if there's something very significant that responds to a vibratory response, well, maybe we're in for something here. And gave a poke to the area itself, the medial calcaneus. This didn't present like a heel spur or heel pain to the point where we got to think of plantar fasciitis, so nothing there. We then went to the sustentaculum tali, where I kind of did expect to see something, because again, that little piece of bone, if it can get chipped, it certainly can refer, and there may not be anything to do about that type of a fracture. But more importantly, the posterior tibial vein and the posterior tibial artery both are traversing around the sustentaculum tali, and from that end, certainly there's not a suggestion that there's a vascular issue, but there's certainly some treatment approaches that can be a reason why the heel would hurt in that particular area. But we didn't see anything. We didn't treat there. We just poked around. Okay, and then you had to go for a walk and go out to toe raises, and those all elicited symptoms. Okay, so let's see if this is contractile. Poked around at the Achilles. Again, palpation did not reveal anything. So I said, here's what I want to do. Let's go face down. Let's bring some elbows and some knuckles on some key points in the lateral gastroc first. Why lateral first? Because I really think it's the medial. Two reasons why. Most of the time it's medial gastroc, and number two, the saphenous vein travels through the medial gastroc. So sometimes creating a relaxation response, similar to what I'm describing for the posterior tibial vein at the sustentaculum tali, creating some relaxation can allow for a more expeditious return of blood and fluid through the vein, and pain is clearly very often associated with a stagnant flow of fluid through the body, and that's a very osteopathic approach. Probably most important thing I've learned in rehab over the last few years. So brought the heat, in terms of some elbows and some knuckles on the lateral gastroc, get up, walk around, no change. Medial gastroc, then we have a significant change. So at that point, what I suggested was, I said, okay, we can do more of this, which is obviously very uncomfortable, and then continue to stretch and maybe get after some eccentric dorsiflexion work, or I can bring a needle and opted for the needle. One spot, definitely found a taut band. That was the rationale for treating there, and then pain abolished. So clear understanding that this is not gone. This is not something that would be an immediate solution. But that was a very, very quick thought process. Okay, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Let's treat. Instead of continually measure, continually palpate random structures, what can refer to this particular area, because we did start by poking right at the area and didn't really get anything. Okay, moving on, what is also very, very significant here, and now here's a little bit of my recent bias. I have a zero, in my mind, a zero tolerance, 0%, should there ever be Achilles tears. And one of individuals that I work with just had one last week, and I could always give reasons. When I say I work with them, I have a role in their development and their performance, etc. But obviously, I'm not with people all the time, so I can kind of clean my hands of that. Any individual that I have any kind of touch points with, I feel like I feel miserable, even though I could say, okay, well, I probably didn't have enough touch points to help with this situation. I still take it very, very personal. So I look back, and most of them, in fact, all of them are basketball. I'm not going to name their names, but one tennis, and every single one of these mechanisms is a retro step. So hip extension, knee extension, dorsiflexion. And now if there's a situation where an individual, in this case that I'm talking about, is significantly retroverted, then it's very, very hard to maintain that sagittal plane, and then the foot will turn out and the medial gastroc will become a little bit more tense compared to the lateral. Anybody can see this. Try stretch one, stretch the other. Most of the time people are going to be more uncomfortable with the stretch with the hip internally rotated and the bias towards the medial gastroc. So this individual has significant retroversion, as I said. If you turn him into external rotation, he has brilliant hip extension. And we do know that for a lot of team sports, retroversion can be a significant athletic advantage. It's also going to lead to potential extension through the back. So you can trade some extension-based back symptoms or performance issues there where open scissors results, or you can trade that for a calf or Achilles things. So trying to put that all together in terms of why would be very aggressive, because the reality is this individual could certainly do everything that they wanted to do with this medial heel pain, but we went through that process, and now gives us further emphasis on anti-extension training, hip extension training, but also something that relates to what I've talked about a few weeks ago on Twitter, and then talked about earlier this morning in a different vein, and stuff that I've been doing with my own training, because if I have an idea, I usually test kitchen the idea myself, and that is not going for the rear foot elevated split squat, but a regular split squat where both feet are on the ground, but when you come up and finish the split squat, you will get into dorsiflexion. And when you watch most people engaging in split squats, they'll always stay up on their toes when they come up. I don't think that's a mechanical mistake, but for individuals that struggle with hip extension, for individuals that struggle with sagittal plane dorsiflexion, you'll find that is a significant compensation, and we're missing something. We're clearly leaving something on the table of getting that eccentric action through the calf and through the Achilles. And if we do this with the proper loads, then we can address maybe not strength, eccentric strength or explosiveness, but connective tissue value. So we take this interesting approach to a very cheap level of evaluation where we're skipping steps, but again, there's been years of working with this individual, so skip steps without missing anything, and then translating that into maybe it's not rear foot elevated split squat that we need to get better at, but it's the split squat where we finish at the top, and then we even can go back and start to understand one of the very, very poorly scored movements in the FMS is the inline lunge. And in order to have a 2, you have to start in the position and finish in the position. But when you look at the inline lunge, lots of folks are, if they can even start in the right position, which most people, well, a lot of people that are challenged cannot. Remember, I'm seeing a lot of people that are jacked up that are more on the recovery side. But that being said, they'll start straight, they'll drop into a squat, lots of things are checking off for the 2, but then when they come up, that back foot turns out. And that to me is extremely meaningful. Most people just score it like haphazardly, and I think that's obviously a mistake. I think lots of the things in FMS are scored very poorly. I don't know why, but I think we're still seeing that some almost 20 years after its inception. But now that gives us this link to basically over the last couple of years, 5 Achilles tears that I've been involved with, where it's always this step back. In basketball, it's this step back to get into the triple threat position. One of them was backpedaling, where again there's this hip extension with knee extension to push off to the following step. And in tennis, step back for a forehand. I remember when I was younger and I never understood, Vinny Testaverde was on the Jets at the time and took like a 3-step drop and just like almost plodding, because Vinny Testaverde wasn't exactly a Kyler Murray or a Tua where he was moving around real well in the pocket, but just took no one near him and just collapsed as he stepped back and into his 3rd step on that drop. And I think if you look at some other, again, I'm not going to mention, but because I'm going to guess a lot of people know who I'm talking about, is when you look at that step back, if we're missing hip extension, if we're missing anti-extension control, I don't even care about strength, if we're missing something more distal, with that knee extension then challenges hip extension. And certainly if we're missing things at the ankle that force turnout, and in one of those cases, probably the worst toe extension, maybe it was almost fused, even though it wasn't officially fused. So all those things add up, and things why I think we can be very, very aggressive on things that maybe don't appear to be that big of a deal, but why we would really be very as thorough as possible for all the different potential referrals for that area, and then move on to appreciate maybe some changes we need to make in the fitness program. So who would have thought? You start with some rehab ideas, and whether it's elbows, knuckles, needles, scraping, voodoo. The therapy is just to create some relaxation, the contractile tissue, and see if you have a change. Then it's the eccentric and isometric tension that's going to remodel that trigger point that was previously impactful. So you start with some rehab, and then we get into training. Who would have thought training equals rehab? Well, what a grand idea. So hopefully that makes sense, and I honestly don't think it's often that complicated. But the last thing I'll say is I remember many years ago I was doing a seminar. I was teaching a seminar in Toronto, and after we were done, I said maybe after they started to see things like this, because I don't think there's any one piece that I discussed that's like earth-shattering. It's not that complicated, but maybe this type of exposure or expose into a thought process, because teaching people how to think is not so easy. I can teach you where to put your knuckle, I can teach you where to put a needle, I can teach you how to do a split squat, but teaching you how to think is a little bit different. And maybe if we can frame that into how to spend your minutes. How do you spend your minutes when you're working with someone, particularly from a restorative standpoint? That's the biggest change that sometimes people need to make. Less measurement, more doing, more hunt and peck, figure out what it is that makes this system tick and why it's barking with some symptoms. That to me is train equals rehab. That's what you'll see on the TEqualsR Plus platform, TEqualsR, TEqualsR2, TEqualsR3, even the kettlebells and the ACL in action, lots of different things that embody this thought process. So hopefully you'll check that out at charlieweingroff.com. We got some decent discounts. And lastly, for those of you, if anybody is in the Crichton section of Mobile, Alabama, if anybody's seen a leprechaun, say yeah.